So there was some crazy news that I totally missed out on last week that I definitely feel like I need to talk about. The Disc Golf Pro Tour has announced that they'll be merging their entire operations and events in Europe with the European Pro Tour and the Eurotour. Let's get into it. So what feels like it kind of was inevitable, but also kind of never was going to actually happen. These events known as the Eurotour and the European Disc Golf Tour have like unofficially but officially gotten merged with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, meaning that all of the events for the 2024 season will be streamed and hosted by dgpt. This means that there will be no separate events for a certain week, whereas last year you had stuff like the Suva Open that were the exact same weekend as other events on the European Pro Tours, but now it is all being merged to one singular entity. And continuing the trend of my last video, it does seem like there will be a reduction in the total number of events that you can watch. But with that said, it has been soft confirmed that there'll be 5 Elite Series or majors, with the obvious major being European Open, and 5 Silver Series events. Now, the fact that it was actually named Silver Series is a bit confusing, because if Jeff Spring is using the Silver Series indignation, does that mean that all the qualifying events in the US are now Silver Series as well? Because that's a major change that I feel like I would really like to know about. But for right now, we don't know. So right now there are soft confirmed 5 Silver Series events in Europe that will be spanning the entire season. But the majority of the Elite Series will be between May and July, with the European Open being the end of July. So this means that players like Kristen, Nicholas, Evelina, Henna, Silver all have the opportunity to spend basically 2 to 3 months just doing Elite Series events, but in Europe. So they can still qualify for stuff like the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship, but they will not be penalized. And I think for players that really do value being home, not being in a foreign country, which is very understandable, will not be forced to be in the States. And I think this also gives a good opportunity for players like Evelina that seem to really thrive in that home environment, that home ecosystem will do a lot better. Because if you looked at the putting from Evelina, I mean, it still was not the best, but the stats showed that she was definitely a better putter when she's back home. But just being more inclusive and allowing more players to play what feels like a more substantive European Tour section does feel like a great change for the sport. And also having the Disc Golf Stream, which was the European streaming site, merged with Disc Golf Network, allows them to have a much better focus, because there would be weekends where you'd have 2 concurrent streams. Basically, if you were somebody that was in Finland or Estonia, you're going to be watching the Disc Golf Stream and not watching Disc Golf Network. And vice versa, if you were in the States, you'd not watch the Disc Golf Stream. So I think it is definitely a good change. I would be very intrigued to see, are they going to continue the Finnish only streams? Because I know that was like a major part of the Disc Golf Stream. A lot of questions there, but the main thing is there is a very good striving of consolidation with the European section, which I think ultimately just provides a better experience for everybody, including directors, players, and spectators. But it also has to be noted that in typical Jeff Spring fashion, it feels like there was some questions that are still left to be answered, because I think it was a bit of a rushed decision, because you had Jeff Spring not fully sure what events are going to be part of the Silver Series. You don't know the exact point system for those Silver Series events. But as far as the main Elite Series events go, it is still the same point equivalent to a main Elite Series event. So 100 points are given to each Elite Series event. And going over the full Elite Series events, we have the Copenhagen Open, Turku Open in Finland, Swedish Open, Krakow Open in Oslo, Norway, the European Open, obviously, and then the European Disc Golf Festival in Estonia. And then we also have 5 more Silver Series events. So this does feel like a pretty comprehensive, good experience if you are wanting to be a player playing in Europe, whether that's because you want to be close to family, close to home, or if you're a US player, you have a big opportunity to spend a good chunk of your season in Europe, which could just be fun. Like, being able to travel is so rarely seen in a lot of disc golf. It's mostly just you drive your van from one place to another, constantly on the go, and never able to really relax. Whereas here, I think you have a big opportunity to explore all of the Nordic states, or be able to see all of the mainland stuff like France, Portugal, Spain, and be able to see a lot more than just that disc golf course, which for people in the States is hardly ever a thing, because you're basically in the middle of nowhere when you are on these Pro Tour courses, so you do not have the same opportunity to travel. Whereas in Europe, you can fly basically anywhere in the surrounding countries for very little money and very fast. And if you're able to get your sponsor to pay for these flights, then the feasibility of becoming a European disc golfer becomes a lot more possible. And the reality that the 2023 season was basically just Paul from the States. Like, there was very few US native players playing these European events. So we might actually get to see some amount of parity, and we might get to see a lot more players than just everybody from Finland, because they were really stacked. And seeing that comprehensive nature is really, really good. So ultimately, I think this is a great change, and it does show that the Disc Golf Pro Tour is making great strides towards unifying the entire international disc golf scene and being less of a US only focused tournament scene, which ultimately can become very boring and lame, especially when you have kids from Estonia already totally shredding at the age of like 12. So there's a lot of parity that has still yet to be determined from those European countries. And I look forward to seeing what kind of amazing players they end up growing to be. So with that, what do you guys think about these changes? Are you happy, sad, kind of impartial? Love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Wild Runs, signing out. Peace.